There we go. Testing.
Testing.
Ben Carman, everybody. I realize in a lot of these videos I'm kind of doing race recaps and sort of highlight clips and not actually chatting about what's going on firstly in the race and also just in general. So I asked Ben if he could come on so we could pick his brain a bit and he could just give us a general chat about this racing in general. So this video I'm not going to edit and it's probably going to be quite long. So if you're not into that, watch the next video. But if you want some more details on the racing we're doing, then yeah, chuck this in, chuck some headphones in and we'll chat through it. So I do have Ben's rear GoPro footage from the crit we did yesterday, which he got third in. So in 3, 2, 1, we'll let that roll. And then we will have sort of a general chat and then we'll refer to some of this footage. So just before we get started, you can see up here in the top right, this is 10 laps in. So this is, I think it's the first sort of 10 minutes of racing before you manage to get clear and bridge over to that rider that was solo. So if anything comes up here, like feel free to chat about it. But yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, to fill people in on my mindset of this situation. Like, I'm not someone who has a huge sprint like Miles or Jono, so I can't really just sit around in the bunch waiting for a potential bunch kick. So this part of the and so our team plan sort of tied into suiting me quite well, which was just get on the front foot and try and make something happen off the front. And the early part of the race, I was essentially just staying in that top 10 and just getting involved in anything and everything that went. You can't miss the breakaway if you're in all the breakaways. But that being said, we were quite heavily marked. Being an international continental team, it's not like we can just turn up and slip up the road. So I was feeling really strong. So generally in that situation, I find it's best to let 1 or 2 riders go and come across. Because that way, like, if there's a couple of guys up the road, they've already sort of committed to the breakaway. You know that they're strong enough to stay away because otherwise they just come back within half a lap. Whereas if they've been out there for a lap or two, you kind of know that they've got the strength to stay away. And then it's easier to just jump across and then immediately start rolling and try and get something happen than try 15 times with guys who actually aren't that keen. And you end up just constantly in the break and just burning energy with guys who don't even want to roll turns.
Yeah. So like instead of dragging 2 guys who are just looking for a free ride off the front, you wait for the eager guys to already get a gap, and then you're like, cool, they're like solid, and
they're
then
good.
You jump.
And then go across. And like, generally it also means you're going at the hard points in the race because it's easy to get off the front when the bunch sits up. But if you're going off the front when they're already chasing, it kind of means both you and the riders you're with have the strength to sort of hold off a chasing bunch. Plus, like, in this situation, like I was in quite a lot of breaks that it looks like I was riding way harder than I was if you're on the side of the road, because I'd get into a move and if the guys I was with weren't committed, I didn't commit to it either. Like, I didn't just do random hard turns with guys who didn't want to ride and just start yelling at them, and that looks cool to the spectators, but all it does is you're just burning matches. Whereas if I was getting into a move and they didn't want to ride, I just rolled soft turns as well, wait for the bunch, and then just try in the next move, and just sort of wash, rinse, repeat. So you're not cooking yourself too much. And eventually, yeah, like the guy I jumped across to, I could already sort of tell from the way he'd been riding, he was arguably the strongest guy in the race.
He was a weapon, wasn't he? He was off the front. So let me just bring. Oh, by the way, for reference, what's your max heart rate for the people that are watching the heart rate in this video?
At the moment it's about 187, 1 to 189. I'd say 189 is like absolute max for me at the moment. So, and to put it into context, like threshold is like 174. So a lot of the race, like as you can see now, I'm sort of just hovering in that. Close to, but slightly sub threshold.
Yeah, yep. And I think you were nearly 180 before when you were following.
Yeah, they're like, when I say it looked harder than it was, like it was still pretty damn hard. I wasn't soft pedaling, but yeah, like this whole early part was real on off because you know, letting a few moves go and then jump across. But a lot of the times I kept dragging guys who just didn't want to ride. So I was, you know, pretty happy to play it patient and just sit up, wait for the bunch, and then try again in the next breakaway.
Yeah, cool. So the guy that you eventually bridge over to, his name's Vincent Hopperzak, rides for Beat Cycling, who are, I think they're a continental team.
Yeah, they're a continental
They're
team.
the Conti team, a very good Conti team. But he's a Dutch national track rider. He rides on the national team. So just in terms of like, you know, when he was out there looking fairly comfortable and ripping off the front on his own before you bridge to him, yeah, he does have some pedigree. Like, I'll put up some photos. I'm going through on his Instagram now. But yeah, he's obviously a very accomplished rider.
I think he was third at the World Championships in the points race.
Yeah.
Not long ago. So yeah, he's pretty handy.
Perfect.
Especially in these sort of, you know, hour-long punchy on-off races would be his bread and butter. But yeah, like I said, I could just tell from the way he was riding that, like he did, I think it was like 3 laps solo off the front before I bridged across to him, and the bunch was moving. Like it wasn't like one of those situations where the bunch just lets someone go off the front. Like he was genuinely riding away from a moving bunch. So that was sort of the you know, the big red flag to me that this is something I need to spend a few biggies to try and get across to. Yeah.
Yeah, and that rider that just went past with the turned in levers in the De Bruin kit, he's been in a few other crits too. So he's kind of one I spotted. He didn't end up making the move you were in. I think he was in the chasing group, but he's pretty strong.
He's
on the left here. This guy. He's been behind you almost this entire time. He's looked like he was marking you pretty hard.
I think he was, but to be fair, like I wouldn't say he was a favourite, but he's definitely one of the more consistent riders I've seen in these races we're doing. Like he's pretty consistently around the top 10.
Do you think so? You mentioned before that we're kind of marked. I think. That rider that just overtook there. Hold that is. He's the individual pursuit amateur. Brian's his name. Brian Meggins. You got watching this video, especially if you're from the Netherlands, you probably recognise him. Pretty strong rider too. He ended up in your move.
Yeah.
He managed to bridge across.
He was rolling pretty consistent hard turns as well.
Yeah.
It was a pretty solid break we were in. There wasn't really there sort of wasn't really any situation where there was someone who was sort of freeloading. Or trying to, you know, take the easy ride. We were on the pedals pretty much the whole time.
Yeah. Well, it took them I think it was 2 or 3 laps to close the gap to you guys.
That's good to hear because we were riding pretty hard.
It looked hard. I was watching them. I don't know. I wasn't sure if they were going to get there. But in terms of being marked as a team, obviously as a continental team, you naturally get marked in these races because the majority of this field are Dutch club guys. Like this team here, Jeg, they have a lot of really strong riders, but they're not a continental team. So they'll naturally mark the Conti guys. But then also I think just being from Australia, they know you've come a long way. A lot of the guys at the race as well, like watched the videos and they know the team. So I think it's kind of like,
oh yeah,
it gives them something to do. It's like, oh fine, we'll just chase the Nero guys.
No, definitely.
It's kind of understandable.
Well, we do the same thing. If a Dutch team turned up to a Aussie race, you'd be all over them as well.
Yeah, you're totally making their life hard. So one of the things I wanted to chat to you about, because I find it pretty astounding, is the cornering. Like it's obviously something you're very strong at, and you'll even see, for those watching this GoPro footage, through a lot of these corners, gaps are opening up between Ben and the riders behind through the corners. So we've got the course map on the top right. So you can see, obviously the big one is the U-turn going into the finish, but there's a few other corners in there. When I was watching you going like off the front on your own or even in some of those groups, I'm thinking like, I can get through a crit, but I can't do what you can do, which is just sail through the corners really easily. And that's where it looks like you're doing a lot of your damage, is sort of through the corners, out of the corners. You got anything for us in terms of cornering?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One is the best way to get used to cornering is just learning how far you can push the bike before you're in that sort of danger zone, you've gone too far. Because it's a pretty scary feeling when you're, really leaning into a corner. Normally it's your brain that gives way before your tires do. So I'm not encouraging anyone to do what Jono did on the first corner and just send yourself into the bushes. But you do kind of need to at least mentally get used to what it feels like to sort of push that upper limit without crossing the line of going into the red zone. The other number one is just get used to not braking midway through the corner. That just throws your whole center of gravity out. You need to practice making a judgment for speed and slowing down on the run into the corner if you need to, and then don't touch your brakes and commit to the corner, because if you're having to touch your brakes midway through, you've already butchered the corner, and it's actually going to do you more harm than good. And the major one I'd find, especially for this sort of crit style race where you're doing, lots of laps, this sort of doesn't really apply for a road race, but it's this whole race, there is not a corner that I'm coming out of and not making a mental note of how it just went, because none of these corners are straightforward. They're not like a lot of the Aussie crits where you just it's a 90-degree corner, you're on hot mix, and it's pretty straightforward. You just go out to the outside, cut into the apex and back out. There's potholes and speed bumps and just all the kinds of road furniture you could imagine just stacked onto one single corner. And I'm sort of making a mental note to myself every time I go through the corner. Sometimes hitting the apex is actually terrible. That was it, second last corner, there was a manhole on the apex. So, theoretically you should only hit it once, because you've then made the mental note, don't hit that again, you need to swing wide. And after even 3 or 4 laps, you'll find the good line through all the corners. And it can even be like that other video you put up about how I was going around the outside. It was just making the mental note that there was enough exit room that you could come into the corner hot and still be able to ride around the outside of guys, because they were leaving a lot of space on the outside. And yeah, if you're not learning from every corner in the race, you're not going to do well, because you're just going to do this. You're going to ride every lap like it's your first lap. Yeah.
Okay. So you're not actually necessarily going in with this detailed plan of every corner, but throughout every lap, you're just I could improve that, or this is a better line, or I should go outside or inside.
Yeah. And even things if you go through a corner and you see someone else barrel down the outside, well, that should be a mental note, well, hey, I can do that to everyone else too. Or sometimes it's the inside's the better line. And, the U-turn into the finish.
Yeah, that was pretty...
is what got me onto the podium, basically, because I made the mental note that you could actually run up the inside and then run guys wide without running them into the barrier, and that sort of thing. So
what do you explain that? So you run up the inside, meaning
you could kind of come up on it was a left-hand corner, so you could come up on the left.
So around this bend in the top, around that U-turn, for those of you watching on the camera. So inside around the U-turn.
Yeah, and then on the exit, it looked tighter than it was. There was actually a lot of exit room, so you could basically come up on what would be considered too close to the inside.
Yeah,
and
then chopping someone.
Yeah, chopping them, but you could actually run a fair bit of speed and effectively push them to the outside.
And they'd still be safe.
And they'd still be safe. I'm never the kind of person who would just run someone into a barrier to get third place. But I sort of knew I was playing within that sort of, pushing it but safe realm of not killing anyone in the process. And I went into that last corner knowing that I had that sort of room to play with. And that was largely from, pushing that corner a bit and making a mental note that I could hook in and still have lots of room on my outside, and also using the outside sometimes to pass guys because, they were just too far to the inside and that sort of thing. We did it 45 times, so that's sort of 44 learning laps before you nail the last sort of sprint.
Yeah, so video update, we're four laps to go. Are you doing, like in terms of position, are you cornering the hoods or the drops or both? You don't care?
I do a bit of both. If like, generally if it's a really like hook in moment, I'm quite often in the drops. That's just because I'm more lower center of gravity. I'm more comfortable there, but I don't have a huge preference in that situation.
Okay, so you just passed. If it's 42, I never know if it's 42 out of 45. Are you 3 to go or 4 to go?
That's 3 to go.
3 to go. So what was the tactics here? Because did you know that? So this rider behind you is the Dutch track rider for Beat. Did you know he would? I mean, you can kind of look at the guy's builds and be like, he's probably going to have a good sprint. What was the plan?
It was more from how strong he was riding. Like he was doing double the length turns of everyone else there all race, and he'd done that big solo move. Like theoretically, he should have been the most cooked rider there, and he was still riding arguably the strongest. These last 3 laps were very on-off with attacks. And he was just all over every attack. So I sort of went into the finish knowing he was, the guy to beat.
Yeah.
I was starting to struggle from cramps. It was actually quite a hot day, and I tend to struggle with cramps on hot days. So this was an unusual situation for me because normally I would be the guy attacking, trying to avoid the sprint. But because I was cramping, I knew I only had one proper attack or sprint in me, so I wanted to roll the dice and
which you were saving for the final sprint.
Yeah, I thought I'd roll the dice and save that for the final sprint rather than doing some random attack and then cramping and then getting dropped.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fair enough. Cool. So, power down the bottom. Should have done this at the start. What's your threshold power at the moment?
At the moment, it's 375.
Okay. What's your weight?
At 67 kilo.
That's pretty good. Awesome. Cool. And what are you putting? So for those of you that don't know, Ben had a very bad crash at the end of 2021.
2020.
2020. Jeez. So a big recovery from that, rehab and stuff. And I think you've said that it's your sprint that is the last thing that's yet to come back. Aerobic fitness is pretty that's good. That's
pretty much the main, like the 2 main things I'm still struggling with is my sprint is probably still 100 150 watts off what it used to be, and like exactly what I spoke about before is that I'm cramping a lot more now than I used to be because I'm sort of overusing my good leg. So towards the back end of the race, my good leg tends to just be fried, and I'm always cramping on my left leg, because I'm just sort of, the power imbalance isn't huge, but it's enough to sort of tip me over the edge.
So so I think in this sprint, you can crack a 1200,
or like fully fresh, I can hit close to 1200 at the moment. Okay. Where most races I sort of finish at 1100 by the time I've.
Cool.
We'll
see what you did out of this final corner. So coming into actually we're still on the 3rd lap to go because you got to do 44 and lap 45. At
this point, I was basically like there were lots of attacks flying. The brake was sort of doing this awkward. Guys wanted to attack, but also like if we played around too much, they were actually pretty good with acknowledging that the bunch was starting to catch us a little bit too much, and we sort of slot back into rolling turns to open the gap up a bit more and then start attacking each other again. So even though the gap was pretty small at the end, that was pretty intentional by most of the guys in the break to sort of use that gap we'd built up as, I guess you'd sort of say, room to race against each other.
Yeah. Do you get to sit on a bit, given that you've got other teammates, or is it sort of just everyone does their fair share and sprint it
out? I didn't. So at no point in the break did I fully commit to this, in the sense that like I had the attitude that if I got caught, it wasn't the end of the world because we had guys back in the bunch. The flip side to that is I actually spoke to a few of the guys before I went up the road, and a few of them said they were feeling pretty cooked already. So I didn't, whilst I was okay with getting caught, I didn't push that too much by just like blatantly sitting on and being like, yeah, nah, I've got, because not only could that risk me getting caught and then having a team that's tired anyway, generally in my experience, that just puts a target on your back and then no one's going to let you do anything for the rest of the race. Like if I attack or try and sprint, like everyone, it becomes me versus them, which sort of ends up being worse than just rolling the odd turn.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, so inside 2 to go now, and you've just sort of followed. This looks pretty. This looks pretty hard. It's not exactly as friendly, right?
Yeah, these were like
tap around for a sprint.
These were just full-on attacks. And there was, what made it hard was there was a fair bit of like, if someone attacked, everyone was doing the glance over the shoulder to like, play that little bit of gambling where it's like, oh no, I'm going to wait for you to chase, which sort of means that everyone just ends up having to chase because everyone just looks at each other and then a gap opens up and then like we all end up being in just groups of 2 shutting down gaps rather than, you know, chasing the one guy who's attacked or whatever. So it was pretty solid. And yeah, like I said, they were genuine, like over 1,000 watt attacks. This guy, he's
just launched Brian. Yeah.
He launched so many attacks.
He's gone there.
Like,
so you're having to chase this one down then. Oh, and you did a good so that's just to point out. That's so he's attacked there, and instead of just welding him back, you have kicked up to, I think that was like 900 watts you just did there. So instead of just welding him back, you have kicked so that you're not the only one doing the effort. Now this guy in white, he is also doing the effort.
Yeah.
So it is just, you know, okay, the other 3 are getting to sit on, but at least it's not just you doing the effort to bring him back. It's also...
I was kind of annoyed he didn't commit to that attack more because I think there was a brief moment where the 2 of us had the opportunity to just chop off and ride away. But he sort of backed off on the way into that last U-turn and it was too technical for... Like, once he'd backed off, it was too technical for me to sort of take up the reins and really press on because we were freewheeling through the corners. But, yeah, there was a split second there where I thought, oh, if we really press on here, this could be it. But, like I said, I didn't really want it to be me who was doing the pressing on. Yeah. Because I knew I only had that golden move in me.
One last one.
But, just to do the run in here, I knew you needed to be coming into that third last corner, second or third wheel, because it was just the last 3 corners came so fast that if you weren't like second or third, you're too far back.
Now, spoiler, you weren't second or third.
No, I just missed the jump. Like, I wanted to jump like right here.
Yep.
So sort of 4th corner because you could pedal through this one, but basically everyone else had the same idea and I just kind of like, we all just jumped at the same time and no one really moved from the position they started in. And like to be honest, I was pretty cooked. Like I didn't have a huge jump in me to do anything. Like I passed one dude on down here on the outside and then just had to commit to the suicide run up the inside that I spoke about earlier.
Yeah. So that's Brian. So he's looked like he was just going full send to try and do a solo win, which didn't work. So now he's dropped off. So you're actually then there was 5 left. So you're 5th wheel going around this corner.
Yeah. Oh, did the inside into 4th and then managed to jump around 1 and nearly take 2nd. There was sort of
1,000,
a couple of inches in it. Yeah.
Throw. So in blue clipped him. He pulled his foot, I think.
He clipped his foot and then hit a barrier. He was actually first through the last corner and just fully I thought I was going to Stephen Bradbury this for a second when, yeah, I genuinely thought he was going to take 2nd and 3rd with him.
Just sweep him into the barriers and you just go up the inside.
But yeah, it wasn't to be, but yeah, I'm pretty stoked with that one, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really good. Look, that's the GoPro footage ended, but camera's still rolling. If we take this away, leaving this race behind then, do you have anything to add on just, you know, for those of you that are still watching, shout out. But I always say that when I do a long video. Because we can just blabber on now. Because if someone's watched this far, they're probably not going to click off. So
we're testing their patience.
Yeah, yeah. Just because a lot of people in the comments just thoughts on just. I mean, you've raced in Europe. Ben lived in France and was racing for years.
This is my 7th year over.
Yeah. So when we asked Ben, what are your thoughts on racing in Europe so far? You're like, what? What do you mean? I've done this for years. But for those that is there any thoughts on the competition we get, or the type or the racing we're doing? Any thoughts so far, especially just regarding this trip in particular?
I think the racing we're doing is at a pretty high level. I haven't really done a race. I know there was that club race the guys did. I didn't race that one, but out of the races I've done, there hasn't been a race where I've turned up and be like, oh yeah, this is sort of a low enough level where we can just start tailing guys up and that kind of
putting 3 in a move.
Yeah. It's been a pretty consistently high level here.
I wasn't expecting that either, because I did these races, most of these in 2018 when I came over, which is why I recommended the trip. And we were winning some of them and quite dominant, and it wasn't this level. I don't know if it was a COVID thing because racing's changed since then or whatever it is, but it's even these Dutch crits, the level's really high. The guys are legitimately struggling.
Yeah. And I'm putting out massive numbers in every race. I haven't finished a race and averaged under 300 watts since I've been here, and
they're all 330, 340 norm.
Yeah,
for someone who's sub 70 kilos.
Yeah, and that includes a 4.5 hour race. That was still over 300 or something. But no, the level here is really high. But I've never, I did a fair bit of crit racing in France, but it was normally restricted to this sort of July period, and then it was road racing all around that. This is the only place I've been where it's predominantly crits. But the atmosphere here just fully makes up for that. It is, yeah. I think the atmosphere here is better than any other country I've been to. Yeah.
I said this to the guys, we rock up to the start of the crits and I was got a smile on my face.
Yeah.
And it's not the same, it's not the same in the races. Well, we've only done one race in Belgium so far, but it's not the same.
No, it's not.
These crits in these towns, they have something about them which is really fun.
Yeah. And the French crit scene was good. When I was racing it, I thought that was the coolest atmosphere I'd seen. But I think here takes the cake in that regard.
Yeah. So we got quite a few of these to go. Any departing words for those still watching that are sort of invested in this trip so far?
I think the team's building into this trip. I think it'll be completely arrogant and dismissive of the level of racing. You just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna just come out and belt them in the next race or something like that. But I think me personally and the team as a whole is building into this trip, and I don't think a win's entirely unreasonable.
Yeah. 100%. Especially, these crits. I think we can definitely do it. And because I think we've only done 2 races so far with the entire squad.
Yeah.
Because even at this crit last night, Ben Spenceley, he's had gastro, he was sick. So we've been here for 2.5 weeks now? And we've only had
I think it's interesting. I've spoken to a few other teams. We're not the only Aussie team doing a trip around this part of the world, or there's lots of individual riders on European teams, and the vast majority of them have all hated the year so far and have just been sick endlessly all year. So I think, we've been struggling to fill a squad, but we've actually been doing pretty well in that regard too.
Yeah. We've managed to. We've rocked up to every race.
Yeah.
So that's a plus. We haven't skipped any yet. So that is good. Alrighty. Thank you, Ben Carman.
That's all right. I'm going to do a shameless plug and...
Yes, I'll plug for you, and then you can add another plug. Ben is a coach, Oz Cycle Coaching, and are you a graduated psychologist yet?
Not yet, but I will be in 12 months. So I'm almost done because I'm part-time, so I've actually done most of the course. But yeah, I'm nearly graduated.
Awesome.
And I was also going to, those who are keen on this sort of content, I do a semi-regular podcast as well called Project Cycling, and we intend on, doing
Have you done any EPs? I haven't seen you done any.
Not since we've gotten here, but we do plan on doing one in the next couple of days.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So project. I'll put a link. I'll do a link in the video. But yeah. So keep an eye on the channels for that for your podcast, and then you should have another Eurotrip pod if you want more of this kind of chat. It'll probably be a longer form, so you get even more detail.
Yeah. You get more detail and more BS.
Yeah. Love it. More speculation. Brilliant. That's what we want. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Thanks for doing that.
That was all right.